Alright guys, welcome back to some more Monster Energy Supercross 3. Today we are doing a bike testing video. Today we are going to be testing the 450 bikes and the 250 two-stroke. I was going to do the 250 bikes, but I didn't have enough money to upgrade all those bikes. So we just did the 450s and the 250 two-stroke. Now the 450 bikes are all upgraded the same, and every bike is going to be run in the automatic transmission with the standard default bike setup. I just felt like that was probably the best way to do it. It would give the most accurate reading if it was the automatic transmission. That way the game is shifting the bike the same for each bike. And that way it's not me shifting the bike, because maybe I shift it a little bit different for each bike. So I felt like that's probably the most accurate way of doing it. Also, I did say the bikes are all upgraded the same. That really only applies to the 450s because I don't have control over the upgrades on the 250 two-stroke. So that's kind of how that's going to go. Before we jump into the testing, I am going to show you my bike setup because I do get asked that a fair amount, and I didn't feel like it was worth its own video, so I put it at the beginning here. As you see, it's 0, -5, alternating all the way down. That's kind of a main setup I would use, but honestly, a lot of the time, I just use the default setup. I don't usually grab a bike setup, but if I do, that's the one I would use. And then here I'm going to show you, I get asked how you do the whoops as well. In the controller settings, there is an option to pull up on the bars. Left analog stick back. That is actually a thing, and I feel like that is the secret to doing the whoop sections, because it really lifts up on the front end. So Nashville's the example we're going to use because I feel like in Nashville, the whoop sections might not be the longest, but I feel like out of the stock tracks, they're probably the bigger set of whoops in the game. And now you can kind of see that when I do the whoop sections, I'm actually pulling back on both analog sticks. That's kind of the secret, and it pulls the front end up, and then once you get the front end up, you can kind of control how high your front end is. And then, once you get it up in the air, move the analog stick, forwards or backwards, depending on, if your front wheel's too high or too low. It's not really a big secret, but I feel like a lot of people don't realize that you have to pull back on the left stick as well. I think most people are just used to using the right analog stick. So that's kind of why I wanted to show you there is a specific setting for it. And it's the most important part to lifting that front end up. But I mean, you can still kind of sink down into the whoops. And even if you're lifting up on the front end, you can still mess the whoop section up. I mean, the whoops are a bit tougher in this game than they have been in the first two. The first game we were using the small jump as a whoop because the whoop sections were just too easy. And in this game, I don't feel like they're hard, but I do feel like they are tougher than they were in the first and second game. So that's kind of how I approach whoops in the game and my bike setup. But like I said, I do use a very generic bike setup a majority of the time. So yes, let's get into the bike testing and find out which is the fastest. And I know that riding in a straight line isn't the best test of whether a bike is good or not, but it was the most accurate way of testing the bikes and getting results that we can actually compare, because some laps I might make a better lap around the track than others. So the best way I found to test this was to make a custom track, put it in first person, and I have a jump at the beginning and a jump at the end, and I put the back wheel in the middle of the first jump, and then the time stops when the front wheel touches the top of the second jump. So we're going to start with the KX, and I will see you after the comparison is done. Alright, so there you have all the bikes tested, and you see the overall time and the top speed achieved for each bike. You should see a picture of all the times on screen. I do know that they disappeared kind of fast, but it just had to be that way because of how the test was. And you should see it on screen here so you can kind of compare them. I guess the Husky, the Honda, and the two-stroke Honda were all the same and had the best performance in this test. And I already said that because they did well in this test doesn't mean the KTM wouldn't outperform it on the track. But testing the bikes by running laps around a track was really, really inconsistent because maybe I ran a really good time or a really good lap with the Suzuki. And in this test, the Suzuki was the worst bike, but maybe I just ran a heater, you know, using the RMZ, but that doesn't mean that bike is the best bike. You know what I mean? This was the only way I could figure out how to test the bikes and be able to show you something consistent. So, yeah, the Honda 4-stroke and 2-stroke and the Husky were the best performing bikes. The KTM was next. And then, I actually don't have the overlay in front of me right now, but based off of memory, those were the best three, then the KTM, then the Yamaha, the Kawasaki, and the Suzuki. So the differences between the bikes was very minimal. I mean, very minimal, but I feel like the Suzuki was kind of a standout worst. You know, the performance of that bike was significantly worse. So for me, the biggest takeaway from this is probably top speed reached. So which bike had the best acceleration? And that would have been the Honda, the Husky, and the CR250 2-stroke. So pretty much those 3 bikes are, in my opinion, the 3 bikes that won this bike test. They had the best overall time and the quickest top speed reached. So they pretty much won the bike test here. But the other bikes were very close. The KTM was very close. The Yamaha was pretty close. But the Kawasaki was a bit off. And obviously the Suzuki was pretty easily the worst bike. So the tests were interesting. Again, I know this isn't the best way to test the bikes because we're not using the bikes in a straight line. You know, you're running them on a track, over jumps, through whoops, stuff like that, cornering. You know, it was too inconsistent to test the bikes that way. This was the best to give us conclusive results. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. How did you feel about it? Were you surprised by the tests, or did you already expect to see that? I was a bit surprised, a tiny bit. I kind of expected the KTM to be a little bit better and the Kawasaki and the Yamaha to be a little bit closer. But you guys and girls are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the support on the channel lately. It really does mean a lot. And until the next video, take it easy.